Imagine a world where universities set the youth up for true success. South Africa faces a significant problem of youth unemployment. It's very natural to assume that the only people who fall within this category are uneducated or don't hold a tertiary qualification. But that's actually not the case. Newspaper articles and TV programs have showcased the ironic images of numerous graduates who stand at traffic lights in their graduation gowns begging for jobs. Even though the graduate unemployment rate of 10.6% is significantly lower than the national unemployment rate of 32.9%, this rate has actually doubled in the past decade, and experts predict that it could double in the next decade too. This problem of youth unemployment was exacerbated during the COVID-19 pandemic and its aftermath, where millions of people were retrenched from their jobs globally. Due to a limited skill set, people were unable to transition to another field of work, and thus, many professionals were left high and dry and jobless. The pandemic unmasked the lack of sufficient training and preparedness that university students received during their years of training. And it actually proved to us that our approach of producing specialists and not generalists might be detrimental in the long term. And let's not forget the supposed biggest job killer and stealer of them all, artificial intelligence. So if people are going to university but are not guaranteed a job afterwards, and if once receiving that job, it's not pandemic-proof or AI-resistant, what then is the point of university? Are we really maximizing the minimum of 4 years we have with students to prepare them for the future? Should we call it a day on the ancient buildings and gentrify them into modern housing? Maybe turn the library books into paper mache and origami? Or do we rethink, reimagine, and evolve the university experience such that it yields sustainable, fruitful results, not just for the graduate and their immediate community, but also for generations to come? How about creating a comprehensive, holistic, quality form of education that prepares young people to not be menial employees, but leaders of society and industry instead? My name is Vuthlarhi Shirindza, and I'm going to show you exactly how we do that. As a final year medical student who's been at this institution for 7 years and is just 2 months away from being shipped off into the big wide world, I can tell you all about the weird and wonderful causes of high blood pressure, as well as the difference between cholecystitis, choledocholithiasis, and many other types of itises. But I have no idea how the economy works. I can barely define inflation. Please don't ask me how policies and laws are passed in this country. And sure, in high school I was taught about World War I and II, but as a South African, I can't even speak about the Anglo-Boer Wars, the Xhosa Wars, and the Sekhukhune Wars for longer than 30 seconds. And just by a show of hands, who here has learned more from TikTok about real practical life than any of their classes combined? Case in point. So I've spent some time thinking about what this recreated university experience should consist of, and came up with these two things: curriculum reform and civic engagement. It's of paramount importance that students of today are prepared for the future. Forbes has issued a list on the top 10 in-demand skills for 2030, which include critical thinking, design thinking, entrepreneurship, and leadership, just to name a few. These are the current buzzwords of industry, and universities should be jumping at the opportunity to be at the forefront of preparing today's students towards becoming tomorrow's solution-generating leaders by using those building blocks as the material. So here's my proposal of an amended curriculum. We have a course that's taken by all university students, regardless of what you're studying, a course that provides students with basic knowledge on health, economics, law, history, design thinking, entrepreneurship, and leadership. The course will run concurrently with the courses of your main degree throughout all your years of study. The aim of the course is to provide students with a wider base of knowledge. Knowledge that will not only prove useful for their own personal library of wisdom, but will also allow access to new fields of work, The course will also highlight the connectedness and intricacies between fields of work and the importance of multidisciplinary teams, and will show to some that medicine is a social science and not just biology and science, and that engineering is an art. By teaching design thinking and critical thinking, students will be equipped with the basic tools to solve any problem. As people, we're all experts at identifying them, but often feel unqualified or perhaps too entitled to solve them. In South Africa, where we're not short of challenges, it is crucial that every student graduates with an intellectual toolkit to problem solving. This now and next generation of graduates will also be faced with the mammoth task of navigating an era that has never been treaded before: the mechanization of the human and the humanization of the machine. And we're honestly setting our future selves up for failure if we're not taught in university how to navigate that space. It's not enough to expect students to just regurgitate information that they've learned from textbooks. I mean, ChatGPT can do that in 1.5 seconds. But how do we train people how to think, how to critique their thinking, and how to apply their knowledge to ever-changing realities? Africa has the highest entrepreneurship rate in the world. But why do we have this? Why is it that 1 in 5 of the continent's working-age population are starting businesses? This is because the majority of our populations are youth. We have a high burden of youth unemployment, as well as very liberal laws on startups and entrepreneurships. So knowing that entrepreneurship in Africa can play a major role in transforming the livelihoods of people, communities, and the upward trajectories of the economy, why is it not taught to all young people in institutes of higher education, which, contrary to popular belief, is the subject that can be taught? By teaching young people how to start businesses, universities are increasing the success rate of said businesses and are decreasing graduates' reliance on finding already scarce jobs by successfully teaching them how to create their own. A lot of times when we think about quality education, it's measured according to a very limited Western metric. Where is the decolonized quality education that includes local and indigenous knowledge and principles, as well as various pedagogies of teaching? For example, in South Africa, as university students, we should be taught about our history and heritage, who we are, where we come from, so that we carry that with us where we're going. If schools don't think it's important enough to teach, starting from as young as primary and secondary years of schooling, then as a people, our history and identity is honestly at risk of extinction. Decolonized education means teaching that Imhotep, an African Egyptian physician and mathematician, is actually the father of medicine and not Hippocrates. Decolonized education means offering small group tutorials in native languages so that non-English students can better understand and grasp concepts. Decolonized education also means mandating that lecturers take culture and sensitization workshops so that they understand the politics behind the students that they're teaching. That's a decolonized curriculum. Another important aspect that is currently lacking in all university spaces is civic engagement, how we engage with our communities and how they engage with us. We send people from their communities and bring them into university spaces, but while they're here, never truly teach them how to coalesce the two environments. We sometimes don't prepare them enough to not only survive, but thrive in this new environment, especially if it's foreign to them, and also how to take what they've learned and integrate it back into the community. Even the very geographical structure of the university within the community is quite telling. Does your campus have open access, or is it access card gated? And even if it's open, who has access to it? And which unspoken access cards grant entry to some, but deny others? Cards such as race, gender, religion, and socioeconomic status. Have you noticed that most times the only time the university interacts with their communities is when they're conducting research, a process that the community is usually a subject of, but never truly an owner of? Instead of going to communities and finding out what they think their problems are and co-creating solutions with them, university researchers are usually walking solutions that are looking for problems in a community to apply them to. Another time when they think they're truly engaging with communities is when they run these short-term projects or interventions without assessing the impact. Over some time, they pack up and go and write big articles published in big journals and win fancy awards. And where has the community been left in all of this? Sometimes in a worse position than before the project or intervention was implemented. But no one stopped to think and assess the real impact. I think it's really high time that as university researchers and as future university researchers, that we shift our approaches from being an extractive and exploitative process to one that's truly symbiotic and collaborative for all people. But how do we change this as the next generation of graduates, as the next generation of researchers? Firstly, we need to recognize that the university is part of the community and not separate from it. And secondly, that as part of that community, the university has a role and a duty to uphold, one that is truly collaborative and symbiotic for both stakeholders. This is important to emphasize in everyone's university education, because we don't train people to work and function in silos, but we train them to be functional members of their communities and their societies. So, through the curriculum reform, students will not only be taught on proper civic engagement, but will also have the opportunity to apply it. This will be done by running multidisciplinary civic engagement programs that are aimed at co-creating effective solutions with the surrounding community. For example, imagine if, as a student of the University of Cape Town, that from years 1 to 4 of your undergraduate degree, you, a law student, were working with medical, engineering, politics, and sociology students to collectively address a problem that's faced by a community. For example, Masiphumelele, a township which is merely half an hour's journey from here, but a township that is veiled in the cloak of poverty, with informal housing, trickles of water, whispers of sanitation, and where the shadows of violence and echoes of substance abuse linger. Imagine if in those 4 years you applied the principles that you were taught in your design thinking and leadership class and collectively addressed the problems that were faced with the community members and created effective solutions with the community leaders. Imagine if 20 years from now, as an alumnus, you're driving through the community and you realize that the program that you initiated 20 years prior was still active and impactful, because every 4 years since you graduated, the program was passed on as a baton to a new student cohort. And because of that, the community now has proper formal housing with access to sustainable sources of water and electricity. There's now a safe park for the children to play in. There's a sports field and a recreational center for the youth to explore extracurricular activities other than substances and violence. And there's now a well-resourced 24-hour health center within the township so that people don't have to pay financially crippling amounts of money just to access basic health care. And all of this because of sustainable civic engagement that involves bi-directional learning, as well as an equitable exchange of resources, knowledge, and skills between the university and the community. But what if we scaled this, not only for Masiphumelele, but all the Cape Town communities? And what if every university in the world did the same for their communities? Can you imagine how different the world would look just 20 years from now? So, I know that what I'm suggesting is ambitious. Yes, it's big, and it's going to take a while before we have this type of curriculum reform and civic engagement. And I understand that this has to be built on a proper, solid foundation of primary and secondary education, which honestly needs its own reform too. So as a current university student who's listening to this talk, you don't have to wait until 2045 before applying these principles, because I honestly hope you would have graduated by then, unless you're currently a medical student. But here's what you can do in the time being. Firstly, expand the crevices of your mind and enlighten every neurological pathway that it possibly has to offer by learning about everything under the sun and above it. Be prepared for the now and the future. Inform yourself about politics, health, economics, law, history, you name it. Because even though you may not have studied it, it doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you and that you don't need to know it. There's now a plethora of resources available online that you can access to enable and enhance this form of education without even going to university for it. Resources such as YouTube, Udemy Academy, massive open online courses, just to name a few. Be involved in your own community. And not for your own selfish intentions, but truly put the community who lives daily in those circumstances and environments at the center of it. And lastly, challenge your universities and their current systems and education. There will be resistance to change because is it really change if there isn't resistance to it? But through a series of deliberate and strategic conversations, universities will also realize that the education they provide has to be contextual, relevant, appropriate, holistic, transformative, and fit for purpose. We find ourselves at a crossroads of education, where the old paradigms no longer suffice in a world that's beset by change, uncertainty, and soaring challenges. As we stand on the cusp of this educational revolution, let us be the architects of a new era in education, one that transcends borders, bridges divides, and empowers generations to come. Barack Obama once said, "Change requires more than righteous anger. It requires a program, and it requires organizing." I hope that as you listen to this talk, I was not only able to fuel your righteous anger, but also provide the program and organizing that is needed in tertiary education to better prepare students for true success. Thank you.